It's 3 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling. Your phone is face down beside you because you promised yourself you wouldn't check it. Your brain is doing the thing it always does at this hour, replaying a conversation from 6 years ago, reminding you of an email you forgot to send. You assume something is wrong with you, but the real answer is far stranger. For most of human history, waking up in the middle of the night wasn't a malfunction, it was the plan. Your ancestors didn't sleep the way you do. They didn't collapse into 8 unbroken hours and wake up to an alarm. They slept in 2 shifts, a first sleep, then a stretch of quiet wakefulness in the dark, then a second sleep before dawn. Historian Roger Ekirch spent over a decade combing through diaries, court records, and medical texts from pre-industrial Europe, and he found hundreds of casual references to this waking period. People didn't call it insomnia, they called it the watch. It had a name because it was expected. It was normal. So what did they do during it? Some prayed, some had sex, some lay in the dark and talked to whoever was next to them. Low voices in a quiet house, the kind of conversation that only happens when the rest of the world is asleep and no one is in a hurry. Some got up entirely. They tended the fire, they checked on animals, they visited neighbors because apparently walking to a friend's house at 1 a.m. to chat was just a Tuesday. Ekirch found records of people using this window to interpret dreams from their first sleep, almost like a nightly debrief with themselves. Nobody panicked, nobody reached for a solution. The waking itself wasn't the problem. Only you think it is.
Why does this matter now? Because your body has not caught up with your bedroom. Sleep researcher Jerome Siegel at UCLA wanted to know whether segmented, fragile sleep was some kind of dysfunction that modern life had accidentally cured. So he studied 3 groups of people living without electricity, without screens, without clocks: the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Namibia, and the Tsimane of Bolivia. These are 3 unrelated populations on 3 different continents with 3 different diets and languages and cultures. If a natural human sleep pattern exists, you'd expect to see it show up the same way in all 3. Here's the strange part. None of them slept in one solid block either. They dozed, they woke briefly in the night. Their total sleep time was actually shorter than the 8 hours doctors recommend to you. And they weren't walking around exhausted. They were fine. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What if the 8-hour block isn't natural at all? What if it's an invention dressed up as a biological requirement? It probably is. Before artificial light, night wasn't empty time to be optimized. It was long. Winter nights in northern latitudes could stretch 14 hours. No creature, prehistoric or otherwise, is built to lie motionless and unconscious for 14 hours straight. Splitting the night in 2 with a window of calm wakefulness in the middle may simply be what a body does when darkness runs longer than sleep does. Your ancestors weren't broken by the dark, they adapted to it. Then came the light bulb. Historians point to the late 1800s as the hinge point, when gas lamps and then electric light began pushing bedtimes later and compressing the night into something manageable, something schedulable. Sleep stopped being a response to darkness and became a block of time you had to fit in before work. The watch, that quiet hour of candlelit thought or hushed conversation, had nowhere left to live. It got squeezed out. And when people kept waking up in the night anyway because their biology hadn't gotten the memo, doctors started giving it a name, a diagnosis, a problem to be medicated away. Here's what makes this genuinely unsettling. The anxiety you feel at 3 a.m. isn't only about whatever thought is looping in your head. Some of it is about the waking itself. You've been taught that unbroken sleep is the only correct kind. So the moment you're awake in the dark, a second layer of stress switches on. Worry about the worry. Panic that you'll be tired tomorrow because you're not asleep right now. Anthropologist Carol Worthman, who has spent years studying sleep across cultures, from foraging groups to industrialized cities, points out something simple but easy to miss.
In many traditional societies, people sleep in the same room, sometimes the same bed, as several family members. Someone is almost always stirring. Waking briefly isn't alarming because it's woven into a shared, noisy, communal night. You, on the other hand, sleep alone, in silence, in a dark room, and treat any interruption to that silence as a 5-alarm fire. So the light isn't only around you, it's changed what's inside your head. Think about what a typical night looks like now. Curtains block out every trace of the moon. A phone screen glows 2 feet from your face until the second you try to fall asleep. An app tracks your sleep score like an exam grade, and if the number is low, you feel like you failed something, even though you're not sure what. None of this existed for the vast majority of the time humans have existed. Your body is still operating on instructions written for firelight and stars, and you're running those instructions inside a room lit like a hospital hallway. There's a cruel irony buried in all of this. The more people worry about not sleeping through the night, the harder that broken sleep becomes to bear, and the worse it tends to get. Clinicians call this a stress response, and it's a well-documented one. Anxiety about wakefulness raises cortisol, and cortisol makes it even harder to drift back off. You end up trapped in a loop that your ancestors never had to enter because they never framed the waking as a failure in the first place. So what would it look like to take the pressure off? Not lying there white-knuckling your eyes shut, willing sleep to return through sheer force. Not grabbing your phone, which floods your eyes with exactly the wrong kind of light. Something closer to what the watch used to be. Lying in the dark without a goal. Letting your mind wander instead of fighting it into submission. Some people find that simply expecting the wake-up, treating it as ordinary instead of alarming, is enough to shrink it back down to 10 or 15 quiet minutes instead of an hour of spiraling. You're not trying to force sleep, you're just waiting for it, the way people used to wait out a candle. None of this means modern sleep advice is worthless. Consistent light exposure matters. Screens before bed genuinely do disrupt the hormone that makes you sleepy. But somewhere in translating all of that into rules, something got lost. The fact that a body drifting in and out of sleep across a long night isn't a warning light on the dashboard. It might be the default setting. It might be what you were built for all along. And that changes what those 3 a.m. minutes actually are. Not a symptom, not evidence that something in you is malfunctioning. A window that people used to fill with quiet thought, low conversation, half-formed dreams turned over in the dark, before drifting easily back into a second stretch of sleep, no different in kind from the first. It's 3 a.m. You're staring at the ceiling, and maybe you're not failing at sleep at all. Maybe you're just awake for the watch.